thought I would first of all let you know, show me that first photo again, Paul. There we go. So this is where we went. We didn't just stay there on the rock, but that is kind of the photo shot for the Galapagos. It is what's called Darwin's Arch. And if any of you are unaware, this is where one of the greatest farces heaped upon mankind began. This is where Darwin began to work out his theory of, and I want to use a special word that's far more accurate in describing it. He worked out his theory of macroevolution. Okay? So we think of it as they teach you in school. It's the theory of evolution, but they're not dividing that up. See, I think all of us can agree that we adapt to mankind as well as all other creatures adapt to their environment, right? They may change colors. They may learn how to get food somewhere else. And there's all sorts of things that they may do to adapt to their environment, but that is microevolution. Microevolution is just creatures adapting to their surroundings. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but basically all of the islands look very similar to this in that we're all kind of almost flat-topped and with very little vegetation on them. So the creatures there had to learn really how to fend for themselves differently. And I wanted to thank you for allowing Stevie and I to go on this once-in-a-lifetime vacation. Paula said I'm never allowed to go off where she can't talk to us anymore. We had put 5 days straight where she couldn't get anything because we were on the outer islands, Darwin and Wolf Islands, not on the islands, but in the water surrounding them. And so there was no internet. But we had a great time, and everything was good except the food, right, Stevie? Yep. Neither of us liked the food, but you couldn't get meat and potatoes there, you know. Oh yeah. I sent her a picture, Tony a picture. Stevie ate octopus.
Didn't you bring me some? No. Okay.
He did have it in his bag for like 4 days. It was disgusting. He had put it in a to-go thing, and I said, "You're never going to eat that back at the hotel." Well, not only did he not eat it, but he took it with us to the boat. Okay. You know, it was gross enough watching him eat those suckers. You know, it was bad. But the food we weren't really overly fond of, but we had a wonderful time meeting people from all over the world, talking to them about their exploits. I spoke with 2 French girls that I talked to a lot in their mid-30s, and like one of them, they both travel together now. And I said, "When did you guys meet?" And they said 15 and a half months ago when we were on a boat that sank. Okay. And I had to get that story. They were on a boat in Egypt that sank. And so I thought, what a great way to come together, huh? And so just wonderful people, had a great time. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And we're going to be looking at a few of the creatures that we had the great opportunity to see. We have any of those up there? Okay, for those of you that don't know, that is the frigate bird. And the one with all the... How many of you know that the animal kingdom, the male's always better looking? Right? So there he is, showing off. He's got his big, whatever that is, going, and that's wifey right there next to him. And so you can see that, and they are huge. Their wingspan is humongous, and they're the ones that will dive down into the ocean and grab fish. And so they always seem to, they make their nests in these branches, and you see how lively the trees look there, right? That's what I was saying. Vegetation is very sparse. It's like a bunch of twigs. And so, but we did have some incredible things to look at. Some of these creatures, what, we got another one? Okay. There's Lori's favorite. Lori, just for you. We had to put boots on. Not because of where they went to the bathroom, but because there were fire ants all over the place. And so, but they seem to not mind, and that's the giant tortoise. They are big and slow. Several times we had to stop and wait for them to go across the road. It's not as fast as the cows go. A little slower. Is that it? All right. Many of these creatures are completely different than creatures of the same type elsewhere because they've adapted. And God created each one of them. And I wanted to make sure that we understand that, yes, they had microevolution in that they adapted. The water lizard, which I don't know if I got pictures of them yet, but the water iguana learned that there was no vegetation on those islands. So they learned to dive into the ocean and eat seaweed that's on the ground. And then the time that they spend on land is warming back up and having their young and stuff. But they spend much of the time during the day going back and forth eating seaweed. And so, yes, they adapted. But they did not change from one animal to another. A water iguana never became a seal. Else why would we have water iguanas? So, they were the stubborn ones, I guess, under Darwin's theory. I don't want to go. So, I'm going to go through this. The story of creation. On the first day, God created light, which he called day, and he called the dark night. Now I want you to notice, he didn't create the sun, moon, and stars that we associate with light. It is commonly assumed, right, that scientists will tell you if the sun goes out, we will have no light. Except light came before the sun. On the second day, God created the sky. And I'm sure that many of you have been places where the sky was so clear and blue that it was stunning. And God created that very sky that you were looking at then, just as surely as he created the one that's outside today, and the very first one that's captioned in Genesis 1. I know at one point in the evening I went up on top of the deck. We had lounge chairs up there, and I just sat out looking at the stars. And it's amazing, we don't really see that well here in LA because, everybody knows when you come in over Victorville, you see the great gross air that we live in, right? As you get in. And so at night, generally, we don't see that many stars. But out there, it was just amazing. On the third day, God created dry land, which he called earth. And he called the waters that came together seas. Then God created all of the vegetation. Now I want you to notice something. A lot of times we miss this when we read through Genesis. God created everything in specific, necessary order. All of creation needs light to survive. So he created that first. Then, next, all living creatures and plants need water to survive. So he created that next. And before creating creatures of all kinds, God created plants that are the basis for all creatures' nourishment, great and small, not to mention aiding in the production of oxygen. God is orderly. I am not. All in a day's work, right? Now, on the fourth day, God made the sun, moon, and stars. And I've got to tell you, Paula didn't agree with me on this, but when I think of God created the sun, moon, and stars, big deal. Except when you start to think of what that entails. You know, at first glance, it seems like that's a half day for God. You know, I'll take off for lunch and not come back. But when you think about it in creating the stars, see, stars are suns for other planets. And so when God was creating many suns and many planets, and so much more. In other words, the universe, the galaxies, and everything you think about when it comes to outer space, except Star Wars and Star Trek. Not that. Just everything you think about when you look out at night, all of that is what He created. On the fifth day, I like the fifth day, God created the sea creatures. That is a whale shark. Right there, I was about 6 feet from it. And it was an incredible experience to be so close to these behemoth creatures. 99% of the whale sharks in the Galapagos are pregnant females. So, I don't know if I included that picture, this, that underside. But when you look at them, there's a big underside that's a white, and it's their pregnant belly. And they average between 30 and 50 feet in length. So you can see when I was 6 feet from it like that, there was a whole bunch of, I couldn't fit all of it in any one photo unless I was well back from it. So 50 feet, and they eat the smallest creatures in the ocean. They eat plankton and krill, little things. They don't have teeth. They open their mouth, which is just a giant, big, oval thing. They open their mouth and allow all the water to rush through. They're filter feeding. So all the water with that stuff comes through, and their body filters out, or filters in, the actual krill, and then lets the rest of the water go through. So they're like a giant strainer. It is my theory that this is what swallowed Jonah. Okay? Why do I say that? The Bible says a great fish. Does not say a great mammal. Whales are mammals. A whale shark is a fish. It is the largest non-mammalian creature in the water. And when you see that mouth open, a person could easily fit in there. And he doesn't have any teeth, so he wouldn't chop them up on the way down. That's just my thing. I think so. I told that to a couple of guys, really. The Muslim girl was really interested. So it was funny because just before taking that first photo, I was ready to end the dive. Because I had, not a lot of air left, and the whale shark that I saw going away from me, you can't catch them. They look like that they're going slow, but it's like Jack and the Beanstalk and the Giants, he's going slow, but there's a lot of territory happening between fins going back and forth. And so they look like they're going slow, but they're actually really moving. And when they decide to leave, they're gone. And so I just said, I'm not going to catch them, I'll go up. And all of a sudden, another one came right back towards me. I think on the 2 dives that I saw them, there were about 8 of them. And so they moved really quickly, but I saw this thing coming down, all I did was drop down. And didn't have to kick, and was able to see it without burning out all my air. And get a few pictures. That was the creature that I most wanted to see going there. And they are bigger than any of the whale sharks anywhere else in the world because they are all pregnant females. All right. Did you know that fish were the only animal creature that wasn't killed off during the flood? Anybody not know that? Yeah. Oh, that's a hammerhead shark. Stevie says they're dorky. We saw a lot of them. It was difficult to get pictures of them because they're kind of just outside the range of your camera's focus. But we saw quite a lot of them. They're pretty big. And they have that hammer going this way. They don't bother you. We did. In fact, when you end your dive, you swim out and you're seeing all of this. Imagine that. That's how many fish. There are just so many fish everywhere. And so you swim out into that. Oh, there's a turtle. Yeah. So, on the 5th day, God also created the birds of the air. Right? That's a frigate in flight. So that thing with that red thing, that's a dodo. I'm sorry. What is it, Dad? Blue-footed booby. Yep. So they're the only place that has the blue-footed one. I'm sorry to tell you that the little guy didn't make it. She had 2 and she picked one. So he was the one that did not get fed. So it's interesting that here, when creating these creatures, God took time to bless these creatures that he had made on the 5th day and told them to be fruitful and multiply. Now on the 6th day, God made the creatures of the land. That is a land iguana, a normal iguana there. We saw when Stevie and I watched one. Actually, the reason he's so close is because he walked right out in front of us trying to go over to eat a young frigate bird. He didn't get there. Mom came back and gave him a what for. Told him to stay away. But, yeah, so that's a dry land iguana. And so first he made the animal kingdom. There's a seal. For a little bit there, Stevie and I were sure that he was going to come up and try it. He came right up to this Israeli girl and almost began to play with her shoestrings. That's how close. So, any more? All right. So, first he made the animal kingdom, every creature apart from mankind. Then God set about to make mankind. Now, one of the things I like to interject here is that we know that the full Trinity, even though it is never specifically talked about in the Old Testament, we know that the full Trinity was involved in creation. Because verse 26 in Genesis chapter 1 says, "Let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness." He didn't say, okay, now I'm gonna. He said, us. And the Gospel of John says that Jesus, and he calls him the Word, was actively involved in creation and that nothing that was made without him. Okay? So this morning, I wanted to give you kind of a glimpse of the wonder of God's creation that Stevie and I were able to view. But more than that, I want to tell you that no matter what creature attracts you, I know Lori loves turtles, and Ed, you were looking forward to seeing the blue-footed booby, right? You said make sure you get a picture of that. And I love the whale shark, personally. But no matter what creature really amazes you, God spent much more time and thought creating us than he did them. God made mankind in his own image. In fact, when he made the other creatures, it never says, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. It doesn't say that. He only says that in creating mankind. And he made us in his own image. And he gave us dominion over every other creature. From the very moment of our creation, we were given control over all other creatures that he had created. Now, that does mean that we're supposed to do that responsibly. So however you may view as responsible, I'll bet almost everybody here has dogs and cats, right? At home. And you feed them, right? You feed them, you clean up after them, all of that. That's part of being a responsible pet owner, right? Well, we're responsible for the caretaking of all the animals. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that mankind has ever made by making many of these creatures into gods to worship. Right? Remember the Israelites made the golden calf? And all sorts of different peoples have different things that they call gods. See, one of the problems is we've not only replaced the Creator with his creations. And God said, I am a jealous God. But not only have we done that, but we have elevated these creatures beyond the beauty that they were given and put what was meant to be under our feet above our own existence. But God saw that everything that he had made was very good. Now, I want to make sure you understand. Sin has touched all of God's creation. The Bible tells us over and over that all of creation was touched and tainted by sin since the fall of Adam and Eve. And God's creation is still a wonder to look at, but it is not the same as it would have been had not sin come along. But with all of that, the pinnacle of God's creation was us. Because we're the only creatures that God created in his own likeness. God, it says, God breathed life into mankind. And though God found that the creation of man was good, he said that it was not good that man should be alone, so God created woman. And if Cherie were here, I know she would have something to say right there. She's good at that. David summed it up the best in Psalm 8. He says, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you're mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them? And yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. You have given them dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under their feet. You see, we were meant to be caretakers, not subjected to them. I find it amazing that as hard-headed and disobedient as mankind has been throughout history, yet God raised many of us up to be his children and joint heirs with Jesus. Now, I've been talking about the creation of mankind in general, but now I want to talk to you about what God thinks of his creation, you. Job chapter 33 says, the Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. That is specifically a personal thing. And it's true for every one of us. Sometimes I get a little irritated that we take some things are taken out of context and used for mankind in general. The verse in Jeremiah that we use all the time, it's a great verse, but I don't know how much of it was meant for all of mankind. Because he also said, I have made you a prophet among the nations. He was specifically talking to Jeremiah at that point. But this is something where Job is saying something that is true for each and every one of us. Without a doubt, that the Spirit of God has made you, and the breath of the Almighty gave you life. 1 Peter chapter 2. But you are a chosen race. What is that race? Christians. Doesn't mean a race as of just Israel, because we have been grafted in. So it's Christians. And so, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, or his own possession, in order that you may proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. He's talking about each and every one of us. You are God's own possession. You know, most of us don't like to think of ourselves as possession. It's become very faux pas to say that your spouse possesses you, right? We know that cats possess their owner because that's just the way they are, but right? But it's just become wrong, politically incorrect to say that. But in truth, the Bible says that spouses possess each other. But you are God's own possession. You belong to Christ. Paul calls it a bondservant or slave. Jesus talked about God's love and care for us. Matthew 10. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. That's becoming easier and easier for me, I'm sure. But God knows every hair on your head. He knows every tear that you have cried. Everything that you've gone through. He not only knows, but he understands because Jesus went through it as well. You are precious to God. He watches over you and cares for you. You truly do have a Father who knows you by name. Isn't that a wonderful thing? That we have a Creator that knows each and every one of our names. I can't even remember my own name half the time. But he knows everyone's name that belong to him. I want to finish by telling you what David said in Psalm 139. I purposely did not include it because it's long, and I want you to just listen to what David says, because in truth, these are the things that apply very much to each and every one of us. So listen to what David says. O Lord, you've searched me and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your Spirit? Or where could I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the furthest limits of the sea, even there, your hand will lead me, and your right hand will hold me fast. And if I say, surely this darkness will cover me, and the light around me become night. Even the darkness isn't dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. That I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. And in your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them even existed yet. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them. They are more than the sand. I come to the end. I am still with you. Oh, that you would kill the wicked, O God, and that the bloodthirsty would depart from me. Those who speak of you maliciously and lift themselves up against you for evil. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred, or righteous hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Isn't that beautiful? Far too often when we just read through the Psalms, we don't understand what we're reading really in our souls. And he says so much, oh Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before and lay your hand upon me. We know that bad things happen to good people, to godly people. But even there, God's hand is upon you. In fact, I love, after going all the way out there into atheist land, where can I go from your spirit? Or where could I flee from your presence? No matter where you go, he is there. And then that part that most of us know, for it was you who formed my inward parts, and you knit me together in my mother's womb. And I love this. I am fearfully. In other words, it took thought. You took thought. You took precision. You took attention. God paid attention to what he was doing when he made you. Does it mean you can screw it up? Of course. We've kind of screwed up a lot of creation, right? And if I eat too much chicken fried steak and gravy, I can screw the body up, can't I? Or if you eat too much chocolate and never take showers when you're a teenager, you can do a whole lot of things to yourself. If you deny Christ, you can change what God had given you, hoped that you would be. See, God allows you to choose. But see, God understands who you are in the context of the cross. Isn't that great? See, he doesn't just see me. How many of you have seen those? I think Brad, a couple weeks ago before I left, Connor was fooling around and did that thing on the phone where it takes your picture and does stuff to you. Yeah? Right? And we all know the old style version of that was the carnival, right? Mirrors. And it would make you or really long and thin and distort your face. Well, phones all have kind of like that now. But God, see, he doesn't see a mirror. if I were to hold up, I thought about that. I should bring out a mirror. And then I thought, well, God doesn't actually see that. God sees the finished product. God sees me through the eyes of the cross. And He sees, because my name and your name is written in the book of life, He sees us as we will be, as He created us to be. Those of you on Wednesday nights, He sees us mature. Something our wives don't always see. But He sees us the way we're going to be. The way He created us to be. Not with all the junk that we've done to our bodies or to our spirit and our character. He sees us when He's actually done with us. Isn't that great? How many of you think your spouses look at you the way, after 30 years of marriage, still look at you the way that they the finished product, or do they still think of you as, oh, he's still missing the boat a little bit? See, no one else can do that. God looks at you and goes, wow, what I created. Look what Moses has become. Look what Jamie. Look what they have become. Even though here and now I haven't become that yet. He who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. See? And He sees that. He sees you in the context of that final day when Jesus says, it's time.